This could last 8 hours.
Oh yeah. Bring on the fun.
Well, I still got to pack, so I mean, I got time.
When are you
For
flying out?
Friday? Oh, you're leaving today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow afternoon.
Really?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna spend some time, meet some friends and some family friends that have been there for a while. So
Nice.
hopefully get a tour of Google for lunch
Oh,
one
really?
day. So,
Sweet.
Nice.
yeah, one of my friends, she actually works at Google, so.
Cool.
Is she a Googler? Wait, or what do they call them in the movie? Interns? What's
I don't know.
Did you guys ever watch it?
Oh, a Noogler?
I did, but Noogler,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
No, I think she's been there for some time now.
My boyfriend worked there for a summer. It's so nice.
Really?
Yeah.
Google?
I did an internship there. Yeah.
Yeah. I went there once. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. But if you get to pick between San Francisco or the Mountain View office, do Mountain View because you can like bike around between all of the different options to eat. It's like a whole food court.
Hello.
Oh. Hey.
How's it
So
going,
how's
guys?
it going?
Hey, Rich.
How you doing?
Pretty good. Just plugging in some headphones here.
Cool.
Good vibes.
I'm going to crunchily and noisily eat an apple while we go about this. That's cool.
Perfect.
Hopefully where's the mute button here? There we go. There's a mute. Okay. Yeah. If I get too crunchy, just let me know.
Oh, we'll just mute to ourselves. Don't worry about it.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks. I didn't see. I didn't see any papers or write-ups or anything. So I'm hoping. Yeah. That you guys. Well, I'm hoping that can be useful based on real-time information from today. So. Adriana and Doug both had separate meetings today, so they couldn't make it today. Adriana said she might be able to hop on, but yeah. So you guys can just go ahead. I'm all ears, plugged in with the headphones. So go right ahead.
Okay, sounds great. So after our last call, we took a big step back and decided to reevaluate our whole business model and what we needed in order to develop the hands and the business itself. And if Mohit, are you screen sharing? Yeah. If you can just go to the last slide, Mohit, all the way at the bottom.
Yeah, I meant to loop back with you guys offline after the meeting last time, but I hope that Doug was clear that it's not that you shouldn't do what you're doing, but it's just there are just some tough questions to ask. So yeah, but if you recalibrated stuff, that's perfectly fine too. So yeah, let's see where you guys decide to go from here.
Yeah, we were just like sort of just laying out everything that we needed in order for this to be a success. As far as we could think, from the most basic things to the not so basic things. So I'm just going to walk through this, and feel free to interject at any point with thoughts, questions, or whatever. Okay, so these are what we think essentially we need as part of the business process, and then the device.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So the device are distributed through a well-established distribution network. And
okay. So I'm pulling up something on Mohit's screen, right?
Yeah, it's on Mohit's screen. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I'm just gonna read them off and then just ask questions or interject whenever. So the materials are readily and continually available. One of the issues for the materials in Haiti that we went over last time is that the plastic is super expensive, and the good point you guys brought up is if the printer breaks, then what? Then the business needs to maintain a good inventory. Self-explanatory. The business can fit and provide devices quickly and as needed, so that there is an insufficient delay in delivery. One of the other things in Haiti is that the resident population is relatively transient. So when the patient comes in and needs a device, we need to be able to offer that device pretty quickly because there's no guarantees they're going to come back in.
Got it.
And that the device can reach remote communities and patients. One of the ways that Hospital Albert Schweitzer was set up is that they have 4 dispensary hospitals in the valleys and the mountains in order to reach the rural residents, which is a large part of Haiti.
Okay.
And we're going to need to piggyback onto those networks to get our devices out there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, just to interject one thing. Yeah, that sounds, all those points sound great. I think these were, just to take a little step back, I think these address the major concern that we would have from an investor's point of view, which was, is this a hammer in search of a nail, right? Which is always the issue. And, all of us are also scientists on the NBC team, so, we're very enamored with technology. We're all technicians at heart, but we've also, I personally have been burned, and other people have been burned from both sides of the investor table on hammers in search of a nail, right? So that's why Doug was really probing about, okay, is this even the best technology to achieve the aims that you want to achieve? So by narrowing it down to these things, particularly, the transient community or transient target, for example, that's a great point. So trying to find those angles are going to be critical for what you guys are trying to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just taking notes here as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because honestly, I mean, when you guys are pitching this up, of course, all the numbers have to add up. But in terms of selling this to someone, it's got to pass like the 30-second BS test for anyone, and for a skeptical audience, right? I mean, just to be completely blunt, So it's got to be like, oh yeah, of course, that's the way to do it, right? And it doesn't have to be financial, right? It could be if someone's a sufficiently motivated philanthropist who wants to get these things to the people. They may say, hey, we should just have a stockpile of these made in, Florida or whatever Doug was saying last time, just ship it, right? But, so if you can motivate, okay, we actually do want to have a local 3D printer there. They are commodity items at this point, so that if they're broken, we can have 2 or 3 stockpiled, so we don't have to worry about that. That takes care of the problem about if there's a broken printer. The plastic's easier to store there, and then the main point is addressing a transient population or something there that you need to be more bespoke with your hands. Then that's a more convincing sell.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Yeah. And also the other point that he had brought up last time was sort of the adaptability of the hand, which makes a 3D printer important. That is definitely the case.
Yeah.
Whenever Mohit and I were there, we're just like seeing a few people that actually needed prosthetics. They needed them for very different functions. One was a farmer that had just lost both of his hands.
Right.
And he would need it for farming. Another was a businessman, and another was just a teen.
Right.
So
yeah, like in your pitch deck, having a picture of a farmer who, right, like some special tool or implement that he needs to hold, and the fact that, he needs some sort of specialized prosthetic to deal with that is like a super convincing sell. I mean, something super easy to understand, right?
Okay, great.
Actually, Richard, I have a question for you. When you were speaking, in regards to like us being a startup company, are we trying to financially to make ourselves look like more viable or more practical kind of solution? Like, is it possible to start off as presenting ourselves with 3D printing being a introductory approach, but once we have a vetted system, then we can move towards injection molding or something of a mass production kind of scale? Or are we trying to just go mass scale just from the very get-go?
I think in general, a technology that can't be scalable will always sound better and look better. That being said, if you're upfront about, if the main point of the company is to deliver hands and you're relatively agnostic about the method of producing them, then your investor, unless he's or she is from Autodesk and has a vested interest in selling you printers, then it shouldn't really matter, right? I think it then becomes an issue of, well, is the expertise and the lessons that you're going to learn and the production capabilities that you're going to develop from using tool X, are they going to be reasonably transferable to, or from method X to method Y, right? So for a lot of these things you're talking about, like distribution pipelines, things like that, I just not knowing that much about the details, it seems to me that it'd be relatively transferable. If you produce a hand somewhere using one method or the other, I don't think it makes a difference. Fundamentally, if the main protocol is still going to be local production, this and that. Now, if you're saying it's the difference between local production with a 3D printer and injection molding, from a distance, then it may not be as transferable. Am I making sense?
No, yeah, it introduces a little more variables because we have a network of actual people that can manufacture our hands too. So 3D printing, even capitalizing on our volunteer network, is another means of manufacturing, bypassing costs that may come from injection molding. It's expensive to actually create these negative molds to actually produce these plastic materials. But
right.
That's just something I was kind of curious about for your.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that would be helpful, maybe not in a final pitch deck, or actually maybe in a final pitch deck, but just for a business plan on your guys' end, or a development plan, would be essentially just like a flow chart that goes, from concept or whatever, some measurements on a hand or some specifications on a hand to hand getting to a person in need, right? And that can be, it all sort of funnels in on that person at the end, but before that it can sort of branch off at various points, right? You can have someone produce it on site, so that's a little bit closer. Someone produce it far away, and then there's a transport step, and so there's this sort of tree to get to the final.
We have something similar to that. But
we do have a slide on that actually.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just can't remember on your slide deck whether you had something like that.
No, we made it after the talk.
Okay, yeah.
My apologies, not that you can continue on with the actual evaluation.
Right. So I mean, that'd just be useful for you guys to think about. It may be equivalent, right? And then there's no reason to choose between the two, and you want to stay flexible, and that's fine. But if you start attaching, as you get more concrete, and you start attaching numbers to some of these things, or risks associated with them, then some may appear to be obviously better than the other, right? Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So anyway, sorry. Please go ahead.
Oh, right. Well, Mohit, do you want to show just sort of our flow chart?
Or
we can get to it, I guess.
Yeah, let's finish this slide first.
Okay. So another essential is that the device improves the patient's standard of living. This is a measurable that we want to have is the device has a measurable financial impact. So this would require some sort of longitudinal tracking.
Okay.
Again,
it's like some sort of income thing or something, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The device can be easily cleaned or sterilized because since it's a limb, it's going to be used for a lot of things, including eating or cleaning. The device has a positive psychological impact on the user. Something that we found about the hands so far in the United States with children using them is that one of the greatest advantages has just been the mere presence of the hand gives them greater confidence, so on and so forth, within the classroom. They talk more.
Cool.
The device makes it possible for the patient to perform two-handed work-related activities. This, again, going back to the farmer or even like holding a bottle to take the cap off, tying shoes, putting a shirt on.
Okay.
Yeah, moving on to the next point, the device incorporates high-quality control. It can be easily repaired. Individual piece of the device can be, same point, replaced or repaired.
Right. Hey,
And
actually, a quick question about the 3D printing process. Having
yeah.
never printed anything in my life before, I mean, can you do repairs? You know, can you put something in and then scan its position and then like fix a spot or something like that? Or are the plastics they don't have any hysteresis or something, so that
No,
you can add to it later on or something?
by repair. By
Go ahead.
repair would be just actually like the hand itself is assembled together, so we'd be replacing the entire component.
Oh, okay. So you
So
take the ring
replacement
finger
part
off.
would take a matter of printing. Absolutely, yeah. It
Yeah.
would be, but the smaller parts to print out, replacement parts would take a matter of 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so versus printing a whole entire set out again, which would be hours.
Yeah, I was just curious, like if I don't know, somebody gets in a knife fight and they get a chunk taken out of their hand or something, and they want to, all right, farmers probably aren't going to get
No, alternatively, more to your
whatever,
point, I guess,
some damage or something. Whether
in
they
that
can
case, it may be like there are avenues you can approach to repair it that are a little more, I guess, handy if you're like you kind of are hacking it a little bit where you can use different materials to actually like acetone can help to melt like some ABS plastic and you can actually meld plastics back together in that sense, or you can actually fill it with some other kind of materials to fill in those cracks if those should happen.
Okay, but it's not as good as printing it de novo from layer zero.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm not familiar enough with the resins of the technology. So. Alrighty, cool.
Yeah. Cool. And with the device repair locally, we were thinking it could either be that we send like an inventory of pieces in varying sizes, sort of like a shoe store model where you just have a bunch of sizes laid out for a technician to be able to assemble and deassemble a hand.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Or again, if they could have a printer locally. If you have more than one printer, printers can repair each other. The problem is if both go down, then you're stuck.
Sure.
But you could also have a couple printers on the ground in order to be able to do those repairs.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I think this gets back to the point that's been running through our chats consistently, which is, when you make the decision between, well, should I have the shoe store model or printing locally or what have you? Yeah, I mean, a lot depends on the end user's needs, right? So if it's going to be some super specific, they're using handmade tools. So, in the end, to modify the grip, you really need to be there at the end. Then you basically need to have, and actually it becomes a selling point to have, your local printers, right? If these things are super modular and you can be really clever about the engineering so that you can have a super flexible end shape, even using a bunch of standardized parts, then it may tip you to the other end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just don't know, again, enough about the engineering of these hands and how flexible you can be. But that's something you guys need to motivate one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So is this something you think we should actually try to integrate into our presentation, explaining more of the 3D technology and its versatility, or the manufacturing capability?
Not so much focusing on the technology of 3D printing per se, but if it's required to make, if one of your goals is to meet specific shapes for the end user, right, because they have specific functional needs, and you can't get that by mixing and matching pre-printed or pre-injection molded parts for that matter, and so you need 3D printing at the end user location, then that's your sell, right?
Right. Okay.
And then if it's not, then you can explore other, maybe even multiple parallel business models, like we were talking before about how to get a functional hand to the end user, right? It could be a mix and match approach. Yeah.
Okay.
Am I making sense at all, or?
No. Yeah. I'm trying to get a sense of just what we need to include into our presentation versus what we can exclude to make it most concise to make the best pitch, but also deliver the best message.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely simpler is always better because people are whatever you have 5 minutes of attention and they start dozing off or whatever, thinking about sex or whatever. It just you don't have much time, so.
Yeah, I'm just also curious as to what we should be expecting as a general level of the previous knowledge, at least what people know.
No,
bring
that's
into the picture, because what their perspective is.
No, that's a really good question. We always tell people who pitch to us. So Mission Bay Capital is this seed stage fund made up of scientists, right? So it tends to be more technical. People love to see the details. I think there's an unconscious or even just blatant bias against people who don't share details, technical data. Other people, it's like any talk. You got to know your audience, and ideally you have multiple pitch decks that are tailored, at least somewhat targeted towards your intended audience. For a general audience, it's always better to have a couple concrete details so people believe you know what the hell you're doing, but not to flood them with details that they can't put together or comprehend, right?
Okay.
So this I got to look up again with the final pitch, like who's going to be on the panel, and you guys should do that too, so that you can tailor that more precisely. And for me, I'm not for you. Yeah, I mean for your project, I'm just not sure what your panel's going to be. I mean, were you planning on pitching VCs, or are you going to philanthropic funds, or
we actually don't have a target in that sense. We we can cater to whichever direction, but specifically for this grant, we were actually just try focusing on this one here.
Would it be worthwhile to even pitch to VCs? Would this be something that the VCs would even look at?
Honestly, probably not, just because, to be just totally blunt, VCs are looking for 10x return in 5 years or something, right? No, I mean, that's their model. Yeah, so, now you get these sort of quasi-philanthropic funds where people, they don't want to lose money, but, they'll invest in a sense, right?
Right.
I think the best bet would be to go to philanthropic sources, and then your metrics become 10x the number of farmers who can use their hands better, right? And then great,
So then ultimately, at the end of the day, we would need to have some sort of return on this.
Well, like I said, it depends on the people that you're pitching, right? I think most people, like you were saying earlier, if one of your main goals is to have a sustainable model or even scalable model that you can transport to other, impoverished areas in the world, then I think you should make it as profitable as possible. I mean, that means that it's lean and that it can self-sustain. That's in the end, that's better for the humanitarian goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as much as you can bash the numbers to do that, then that's great.
Okay. Yeah, we actually when we move up to like the business models that we have thought of a little bit, some of them do include a profitable side to them. It might be something to look at.
And let me be a little bit more detailed about that. It doesn't necessarily have to be purely generated by revenues, right? I mean, you can have models for sponsorships or charitable donations or whatever. It's just got to, whatever your business model is, whatever your pro forma financial statement is, it should make sense, right? I mean, you can't be running into the red, every year. If you assume all of the good things are happening, like you get 2 out of the 5 sponsorships at $100,000 level, or whatever your assumptions are.
Right.
Okay, cool. Sorry, keep interrupting. Go ahead.
No. That's great.
This is no such thing.
Yeah. So where was I? Oh, the device is culturally accepted. This is important, especially in a place like Haiti where there's a stigma associated with people that have handicaps. And what we would need to do is the community would need to understand the value of the device and embrace and accept patients who use the device. These all sort of go together. The device has to assimilate to the culture easily, and this will be more of post Haiti, will it be able to translate in other places, the assimilation process that we define there?
Sure. Every culture is going to be, or subculture is going to be different. Yeah, so you're going to have to figure that out on the fly, or whatever. It's going to be different for every community you go into. I wonder if that can be a selling point for you, right? Like, I don't know about Haiti in particular, but, you know, in some communities, maybe like some super high-tech thing from the, you know, the Western world is like a plus, you know, like, right? I mean, it's like an iPhone or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I just don't know. But you have data to speak to that, or comps to speak to that. That's another thing. Investors are always looking for comparables, right? It's like a control in a biological experiment or something. So you don't have to think from first principles. You just be like, well, you know, it's close enough to this, and we can learn, you know, right? So anything that you have, any other projects, even businesses or nonprofits that you can make reasonable comparisons to, that would be super helpful. So I'm sure NGOs or whatever have just tried to distribute a huge number of whatever implements, medicines, you know, I don't know, eyeglasses, all sorts of things, right? That you can learn from for your guys' project.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. Right. Moving on. The business has a clear communication with the community. This is just building off of the previous point. Patients promote a locally enabled community / support system, sort of developing a facilitated network. Patients can easily connect to the eNable to request a device. This has been going on within Google Plus right now, where we have like an eNable matcher that will take a patient in need and a fabricator and match them together, and the fabricator will build a hand and send it to the patient.
Okay.
But that is a U.S. model, and we'll have to figure out a way to translate that to Haiti.
Right, and that could be, again, one arm, or that could be the main trunk of your production distribution strategy. It sounds like it's still up in the air, but it's something you should, you know, we'll work it out over the next few weeks. Right?
Yeah. The business is cognizant of potential governmental and political obstacles. One thing in Haiti is that they have a 35% tax on imports, knowing that a lot of humanitarian aid is coming through. So this might be the case in other places as well. And that's obviously huge, trying to import things, materials or hands. But some of our partners have been there for long enough that they don't get that tax imposed on them, so we can ship with them instead.
Yeah, and that also might inform your numbers, right? I mean, hell, if it's a 35% tariff on imported stuff, you know, you're going to want to import as much low-value crap as you can, right? So if it's bulk plastics, then do that, you know, then save 35% over shipping a hand that has 10 times as much value, or whatever, save 10 times as much, then. You know what I mean, right? If it's a value, I don't know what the tariff is like, but if it's a value-based thing, then that can dramatically affect what your models are going to be.
Okay. Clinical follow-up is easily accessible. We had talked about that a little bit in the last talk about how we were thinking about doing the follow-up is either do it via SMS text or Facebook. A lot of patients have cell phones and use Facebook readily, so that might be a method to do that.
And that's part of the feedback loop if they need to make adjustments or whatnot?
Feedback loop, our own use in order to gather longitudinal data.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
The business provides relevant education. A patient is appropriately trained on how to use the device, and the business help educate the community on disabilities. The second point sort of feeding back to the device being culturally accepted, and the first point being more from the prosthetist perspective.
Okay.
The patient's not going to use the device if they don't know how to use it, if it's not comfortable, if they haven't trained with it. It's going to use different muscle groups than they're used to using. So they're going to have some sort of training in order to use the device appropriately.
Okay.
The device is patient appropriate. It's correctly.
Oh, sorry. 1 second. Are you guys taking care of the training, or is that someone else's role? Or
so we have prosthetist partners on the ground.
Okay.
our hope is to distribute. Well, this is our plan is to distribute through them, where they will have patients coming to them. They will be able to fit the prosthetics, teach a patient how to use it, and then have the patient either come in for a follow-up or, yeah, that's what they would do. That's what they do with their prosthetics.
Okay.
They have the patient come in for a follow-up and do training.
Okay, so they'd be a filter and also feet on the ground for boots on the ground for, or hands on the ground for this matter. Okay.
Yeah.
Just, I'm going to dwell upon that. Okay, cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, again, through the prosthetist, the device is correctly sized for the patient. The device is durable enough for daily tasks, which is something that we'll find out through our feedback.
Mm-hmm.
The device suitable for the environment / different professions, again, something we'll find out through feedback. The device is easy to use. Training is not that difficult or overwhelming for the prosthetist to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the device is visually pleasing. This is just something that we were questioned about whenever we were over there by a couple of the doctors and the nurses whenever we were presenting on it.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, basically, do you have any other models that look more hand-like and stuff like that?
Okay. So,
very,
yeah, so that brings up a question because I remember last time, well, I can't see the slide right now, but the slide is a lot more, or sorry, the sort of blow-up diagram of the hand itself, or some model of it. It didn't look very hand-like, probably because this way it's a lot more functional. But, and obviously this ties into the whole cultural acceptance issue and whatnot. But yeah, how much give is there on the design for you guys on that? Again, being totally ignorant of the engineering and whatnot, you know.
It's an interesting question you ask because culturally we've heard from local population or local people being that, you know, they're very concerned with aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was in the hospital talking to different patients, they were more or less ambivalent to the actual appearance, being like, as long as it works, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, the feedback from the doctors was the aesthetics. The feedback from the patients was, I don't care.
Huh, interesting. Okay.
So there must be some sort of middle ground we can hopefully approach or at least attain at some point.
Yeah, it may just be a difficult, yeah, I mean, everyone wants things, you know, cheaper and better, and obviously those two are anti-correlated to some degree. So yeah, it just may be one of those things you have to find some middle ground.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think design-wise we will eventually approach something where we can make the edges more rounder and make it look more anthropomorphic or human-like.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a matter of implementation. We just need the data, or at least the feedback from users to validate us making those kind of design changes.
What about, here's a selling point for 3D printing, is that if you do it on the spot, that you can do a better color match, and maybe that would be a huge thing, a huge sell for the aesthetic point of view. Is that any, maybe, I'm sure you guys thought of that already, but if you haven't, maybe that's another thing that could be a...
We got to look into vendors that sell more skin tone close or relative filaments, because right now we took some MakerBot brown down.
I've gotten the darkest brown from MakerBot. It wasn't dark enough.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know. I wasn't up enough on the 3D printing technology about whether they can adjust colors on the fly or whether it's purely determined by the spool, the base plastic, or whether you can mix in other things on the fly. Yeah, just curious.
Yeah.
No, that's actually an interesting idea. I'll actually look into myself.
Yeah, I mean, I know people here from Autodesk and whatnot who are actively developing resins, so that'd be an interesting. I can ask them about what's the cutting edge, and then what's also available, and then also what's cheap. Try to get a sense of what's going on.
Some people have hacked ways in order to color their plastics, because it's expensive to also buy a bunch of different colors of plastic rather than just have one color and color it yourself. But I haven't really looked into the process. I know one guy just sort of rigged on a Sharpie to color it, but I'm not sure that's the way we're going to go.
That's just what I'm thinking. If you get a way to introduce even a little darker dye into the brown that we have already to
just another nozzle that puts it in line or something. I have no idea how these things work, but
right in the hot. Yeah, that's actually a really great idea. Oh, yeah thank you.
It's all right. We can all start another company after this for 3D printing with color as the 4D printing. You heard it here first.
4D printing.
The other dimension is color. Yeah. Damn, that's actually not a bad idea. Anyway, okay, go ahead.
Sure. Right. I was yeah. The business clearly integrates into the local community. This is sort of feeding off with our want to make it self-sustainable within Haiti. The business is self-sustaining in each country. It doesn't mean that they won't communicate with, like, each hub will communicate with each other, but within itself, it has to be able to sustain itself.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that was the other question about sustainability is, where do you draw the fence, right? Like, how you could say, well, overall, Enable is profitable or, self-sustaining, or does it have to be, within one country or within one village or with, you know what I mean? Like, and again, I don't necessarily have the right answer for that, but it's something that you guys should be very clear about and then, to be able to justify.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things I had with printing from the United States and bringing it over there is that it will never really be a self-sustainable process within Haiti.
Sure.
But that might just be the first step, and then potentially move to that process, because after people do have hands, the repair part of it will definitely occur.
So wait, why do you say that it's not sustainable if you ship from the U.S.? It's because it depends on something in the U.S.?
They're still dependent upon
U.S.-based partners.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but I mean, you're still shipping. I mean, they're not making the plastic there, right?
No, but they would be printing the hands, and they could sell the hands for a profit rather than just.
To your point, though, it's still not self-sustainable because you still have to import resources from outside? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're importing either plastic in the form of pellets or spools or as a hand, and you might say that if you draw the fence this way, that you have you're shipping hands in, the value that you're shipping in is, or the value that you're able to capture within the fence in Haiti is much lower because most of the value is created in printing the hands, turning plastic into a hand, right? So I'm speaking in purely financial terms now, but yeah, it's I don't have the answer for that. I could think more about what's a good definition for sustainable, but it's just something that you guys should be very concrete and clear about, and then be able to back it up. For example, you could say, hey, look, this is a loss, but it's sustainable in this way because the expertise is going to be there, and we're projecting that based on the petrochemical industry there, that they will be able to generate cheap plastics, and that this is not a problem, right? Or whatever, that sort of logic, right?
Yeah.
So we would need then to identify the problems with our sustainability first, and then solutions to it.
Yeah, or you could say it's sustainable, but with these caveats, like we still have to import plastic, and that's fine. Just be upfront about it.
Establish the parameters on what sustainable actually means.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Just be very clear about it, because it's one of those terms that's like
it's really thrown about. Yeah.
Just sort of vague, and if you get sort of technically astute, either philanthropists or investors, well, they're all investors of some sort, they're gonna, don't like vague stuff because it just throws up BS flags.
Okay, great. So we need to work on that.
Yeah.
The business builds local alliances with health, education, religious institutions. Another part of Enable so far that's been pretty successful is the educational side of it, building it into like STEM programs and stuff like that, where high schools will print out hands for kids, and in the U.S. obviously that's taken off with the whole Obama initiative for STEM work. But in a place like Haiti, incorporating 3D printing or even 3D modeling into education is difficult, just because education itself is already so difficult.
Right. So I mean, that can become just like all these other things. It can become a huge plus for your sustainability and value creation equation, right? I mean, that could be a major variable in what you're calling value. It may not be purely financial value, right? But yeah, I mean, educating someone with high tech toys there's a value associated with that, right? And that's something that you can claim as a win. You should claim as a win. Trying to identify all those things is, I mean, if that appeals to the investor, then that's what they want, right? If there's someone who's STEM focused, or they're all about education and bringing technology to impoverished areas, underserved areas, then there's your pitch, right?
Okay. Local community members drive on-the-ground operations, so this was anything from the processes to the 3D print shop that is already over there. Basically being able to operate, obviously with the way we have our model set up right now, with the help of us sending them parts, but then being able to take the process from there and get the feedback and then send it to us, or basically have their part of the process figured out.
Okay. Cool.
Generates local employment opportunities. That would be a plus, I think, in our deck. If we could do that, I think that we can do that. As we move up to the different business strategies, we'll be able to clarify that a little bit more. Anywhere from like salespeople to the people actually distributing the hands to like rural communities, to the process assistants. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean the strength and I mean, to be perfectly frank, the weakness of your proposal so far is that it is a very complex, multivariate thing, which presents an opportunity, right? Which means that you can impact a lot of areas with your one project. That's pretty awesome, right? The weakness then becomes, each one of those, well, a few weaknesses. One, each one of those becomes a reason for it not to work, right? And then also, it's also a lot more work for you guys to really understand each and every one of those branches, right? So it's not just like, oh, we're selling, iPhones, and this is actually that's already pretty complex, but we're going to make a company, we're going to sell it to this pharmaceutical company, and it's a pretty well mapped out value chain, right? I mean, here it's like values imprecisely defined. You're going to have to define that, and then for you to do the research in all of these branches and to understand, what is the value that you're bringing by, tying together various aspects of the community so that they can contribute to this process. I mean, it's huge. I mean, that's very qualitatively, everyone can get behind it, but to make it as quantitative as possible is just going to be hard, right? And to get data to back up your assertions. Again, it's the flip side. It's harder, but once you have that data, it'll make it that much more convincing. My suggestion would be to keep it as simple as possible. I mean, all these points are great, but I would probably focus on a few, and then if the investor is like, hey, well, I really am interested in, how this could impact, STEM education for people who don't have opportunities to usually learn this sort of thing. You'd be like, that's great. I have a whole slide in my appendix that talks about that. That's not the core focus of my presentation, but so for any given pitch that you have, to keep it a little more simple, you have to have all these things in your mind, and ideally have some slides somewhere to talk about it. But for any one given pitch, probably simplify it from this. I understand this is not your pitch. You're talking about the issues that you guys have thought through, and it's totally fine. I'm just thinking in the future as you're putting together your pitch. I would probably not keep it to like 3 points or 4 points or something. These are the things that we're going to really kick ass at. And then there's a whole bunch of derivative benefits, but and we can talk about those if you're interested. But these are the 3 things that we're going to really do with this project.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Yeah, and as you said, this was just like a sort of step back and
Yeah, no, totally understand. Yeah.
Okay, great. The business tracks data to inform future directions is something that we've already talked about for the most part. The design is valued longitudinally. It can be modified, prototype for newly identified situations or jobs. It can be applied to other locations. The business tracks number of hands in use at the patient level. Patient feedback is easy to submit. So we need this again with like the SMS or Facebook, or whenever they come in for the process visit, be able to actually acquire all of the longitudinal data that we need to make assertions to our hypotheses previously listed.
Cool. Yeah, so these are a lot of. So is there like another slide where these are like what you need, and then have you guys started to brainstorm about how to address these various things, or?
Yeah, as far as like a business model, sure.
Yeah, or I mean, there are a number. There's whatever 30 some odd points here. For every one of those, you could come up with a few ideas of how you would do that, right? Like I don't know. Community acceptance could be like, oh, we're going to start a viral marketing campaign on Facebook or something. I don't know, whatever it is. Those types of ideas, and that if there are some that come up that are just like absolute no-brainers, like wow, this is so cheap, and we can have this going in the background, and it could have a huge effect. Then you'd want to sort of bubble those up to the top and focus on those, and then other ones that are like, we just need to get legislation through the Haitian government. Like, okay, well, maybe you may want to deprioritize that because that might take a little more time than your modest project can attend to. Even though hoping for the best, but so just trying to prioritize those things might actually help you focus on which points you want to talk about and pitch as well. Again, you should be knowledgeable about all of these things, right? But you may not want to. You want to be selective in terms of what you're going to talk about to your particular audience.
Okay. Yeah. For sure. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. We've tried to narrow it down a lot. We've already talked about a lot of these within ourselves, but haven't actually written down a lot of the processes that we envision. Like we have thought about like doing like a marketing campaign through the radio and like stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, we haven't written those down, so we should definitely do that.
Cool.
The last point is the business minimizes costs. Something that we've been discussing a lot. The minimal production. There are minimal production costs. Larger hands will cost more due to a higher cost of goods. The device affordable by the local standard of living. So the devices are super affordable by the United States standard of living, but in Haiti, $50 is still a lot of money.
Right.
The discarded devices can be recycled. Plastics, especially the plastics that we use, like PLA, for example, aren't super readily available. And it would be nice to be able to recycle hands after they've been like parts after they've been broken, or hands that someone's grown out of, to do like a hand-me-down system or something like that.
Yeah.
The device can be manufactured with the recycled plastic, something I just said. And the business offers a sliding scale price model to meet a variety of the patient needs or what they can pay. So that's something that they had at the hospital, so that they had a sliding scale for the patients. Like, if you were from within region, you paid less. If you were from out of region, you paid more. And then they would sort of assess the economics of the patient coming in, and then do like a sliding scale based on that, and the patient could haggle.
And this would be managed through the prostheticist, or the person on. Was that the sort of point of control where that would happen, or is this handled upstream? Okay.
It would be like salespeople on the ground, basically.
Right. They'd be technical salespeople, basically. So they'd bid, adjust, and also they'd be managing their own margins, and then however they want to do it. Okay, great.
And the business can offer alternative payment methods. So, for example, if someone comes in and they can't pay for it, they could instead deliver another hand to someone else in a place because they have a motorcycle.
Got it. Okay.
So
Alternative payments.
that's where
Yeah.
they pay for it.
Okay, and then that's going to be locally determined, whatever that is. Yeah.
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 Yeah, so basically that's everything that we've thought through so far.
Okay.
And from there we developed some business models. Go ahead.
Yep.
There we go. Yeah. I can't find it now. Oh, there it is.
We brainstorm numerous potential business models. That slide.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are like the three big things that we thought are really important to our success: is the patient acquisition, the distribution fabrication chain, and the financial offsets that are going to have to occur. So as we had said before, having like the on-the-ground sales model for patient acquisition, where we would hire salespeople to find medical professionals, prosthetists, customers to promote hands, and the salesperson would receive a cut of the sales.
Okay.
And then there would be a referral model where patients can promote eNable to other potential customers, and will receive a reimbursement for referring someone else.
Okay.
And that will hopefully help expand the word, like it'll be just go by word of mouth basically that this device exists in a given location. Ours being Haiti to start.
Okay.
And yeah.
For the reimbursement model, that means that there's going to be some cash flow buffer or something, so people, or you guys will buffer that while the other, for example, a patient gets a hand, can't pay for it, but maybe he needs the hand to do the thing he's going to do or she's going to do to, earn the reimbursement. So essentially, someone's going to be in the hole for $50 until that person can do that thing, right? Or
right. I think that's a little bit reliant on later distribution models, being that we have an inventory that can take that kind of buffer or take that kind of hit.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, that's another thing we can consider, at least try to figure a way to address that.
Okay, and then again, so I'm a little unclear again about the fences or the lines of what is considered like a particular business unit and where the revenues and costs and all that are going in and out of. So this would be like in one region there would be several salespeople and one person who deals with importing and one central storage house and printing location and all that sort of stuff. Is that how you guys envision it?
Yeah, but we haven't exactly worked out those numbers yet. These are still theoretical.
Yeah. No, it was just another twist on or angle on the question I just asked about. So basically, who's going to pay for that initial batch of plastic that can print out the first 10 hands, of which 5 people can pay for it right away, but 3 people to earn it back with a reimbursement for referring someone else in need or something like that.
Right. So for our initial, especially like as we grow, we're not going to have a huge inventory, obviously. Mm-hmm. So we have a large base of volunteers already within eNable that can print hands.
Okay.
So those volunteers typically take the hit. Like when I printed a hand for someone, I printed it and paid for it and sent it, and the recipient got it for free.
Okay. Yeah. So there'll be essentially volunteers who have the capital to buffer that until if and when the person will repay that or re-earn that. Okay.
But we also hi, sorry, I was off the call for a while.
That's
terrible internet connection. But we also are trying to get lots of different funding so that we can have capital, so that we can be the ones who foot that initial bill. So like the way we're sort of envisioning this is like a typical medical device sales structure where the device company processes the device or manufactures them, sends them over to some central storage location, and then the salespeople would go to the storage location, like find the customer, go to the storage location, pick up the device, and then sell it. But they wouldn't be actually responsible to foot that bill. So in this model, we'd be operating like the medical device company is doing.
Okay, so in that sense, that'd be a little bit more hierarchical, and the when you say the local region would be more sustainable, it may not include the the earlier stages of that creation chain, then, right?
Yeah, because I mean, in reality, if we're talking about people with very low income, we can't expect our salespeople, and we wouldn't want to expect our salespeople to have to foot the bill.
Okay.
Yeah, we would
Okay.
it'd be self-sustaining for the distribution, but we'd be responsible for the initial cost of the device.
Okay. Okay, yeah, this gets back to an earlier question, which I think you may not have been here for, Caitlin, which was, when you say you want to have a sustainable model that you can transport to other locations, it just it'll be helpful to be very clear about what you consider sustainable and yeah, what goes into that equation that at the end of the day you say it's a sustainable model.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Right, so moving on to the distribution fabrication models. We already discussed the shoe store model, basically printing out inventory in various sizes so that the patient can come in and select the prefabricated hand that fits. And then within shop, depending upon what they need, this is something that we'll have to figure out, is what sort of adaptations they're going to need for their work or activities or whatever. That's something we'll have to figure out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, this, there could be some sort of hybrid model where for, and this is something which maybe you have data for, but based on needs assessments, you can say, well, 50% of the people can probably deal with off-the-shelf parts or hands that are more or less generic, so then you can, that sort of frees you on how you can produce those and get them to the end users, right? That maybe you can be more flexible about whether they're made with pre-printed parts that you assemble there, or they're injection molded parts that you assemble there, or they're injected molded and assembled somewhere else and then shipped there, right? And then the other 50% of the people require like super specialized stuff that it's just hard to predict. So you need to have like actual local production and assembly capabilities there. So again, anything that you have data that can speak to this would be great.
Yeah, unfortunately we don't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then maybe you have assumptions. I don't know. Yeah. It's just it would be a question that I would ask if you were pitching me.
For sure. No, it makes total sense. So one of the biggest issues that I've had with like sort of dealing with this whole project is that we have so many unknowns, and the whole purpose of it is sort of more as an exploratory venture to see whether it is applicable. You see what I'm saying? And like we haven't exactly measured like when we went over there, it was like a proof of concept. Like, okay, the demand is there. There are patients that need prosthetic hands and need cheap prosthetic hands, and they're not offered in Haiti.
Right.
But
so that was purely a cost, essentially a cost-driven thing. So yeah, as we've evolved this, even just over 2 sessions of talking about this, there are nuances which can really end up motivating in one way or the other to apply your particular hammer, which is the 3D printer, to this, right? And that may or may not, I don't know, require certain special things, circumstances, right? It may be worth, I mean, if you still have those contacts, I mean, just make the call, make 10 calls to 10 doctors and say, look, what are the needs, right? Any data is better than nothing, right? I mean, I understand you'd rather interview 1,000 citizens who've lost their hands. What do they need and how specialized do they need it? But even some sort of one layer above that, talking to doctors or some other centralized point that speaks to a large number of these people, that'd be like super important data to have, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up, but that's actually something we have faced in Haiti ourselves too, being that the doctors would respond, or at least the prosthetists would respond to us, being that there is a need, but they don't know exactly what it is because most of the patients that are there don't know it's available, so they don't come forward and approach themselves. So we're kind of stuck in a cycle of trying to, we have to market ourselves in order to find out what the need is, and then once the need is there, we gotta be at least readily available to fulfill that need, because people don't want to wait for that product as well.
Right. Well, then I mean, then you can easily motivate a a hybrid model, right? Where you're going to be like, look, we're going to have some pre-manufactured stock or something where it's either parts or fully, right? And then have some capabilities to. I mean, you're not going to go all in on we're going to have local production, even though it costs 3 times as much because we need that flexibility, right? If you don't need that flexibility, in the end, right?
No, definitely. I mean, initially we had it modeled out to be that we would produce hands bespoke with our e-enable network or e-enable volunteers that are already in the US that are US based, and once we have a flow, or at least once we have established need, then we can start determining how much we can offset towards local manufacturing.
Perfectly reasonable. Yeah, I mean, it's just as much as you can. Like you want to at least make sure that you want to make sure that at least there's a possibility of your end market, whatever that is. So yeah, that's all. An unknown is better than a known no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you know that there's absolutely no desire for bespoke hands, then this is like a terrible project. You know what I mean? Like, but if it's unknown and you can motivate that, then that's fine. And it's unknown, and it's reasonable to assume that based on the population of the people that have lost their hands primarily work with their hands, and there are multiple tasks that need to be done, and we know that a standard centrally produced boring generic model is just not good at many of the tasks that a typical Haitian would need to do. Then then you may not have the hard data, but you can at least reasonably motivate the bespoke angle, right?
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Okay. So for the distribution fabrication model, we've sort of already talked about all of them in this hybrid model. So I'm just going to move on to the financial offsets.
Yeah.
Where we thought about a couple, one being the TOMS model to offset the sales in low-income areas with sales in high-income areas.
Okay.
Basically, this is something that we would have to approach Enable with, saying, in the United States, would it be possible to sort of sell these for like their face value, $50 at a cost to build them, and then utilize that to build the hands in Haiti?
Right. It is again the question of what is sustainable and what for what group or what what zone or whatever you define it to be. It's an open question. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah. And then there was another idea, is the toy model. This is something that has bounced around with when we had talks with the founder, was essentially like these hands, like kids love them. They love them as toys.
I'm totally thinking of like the Skeletor hand that one of my kids has. Yeah, it's like
that's cool. What it is. Like at a lot of the maker fairs and the fair events and other kinds of conventions that we've been to. We have models that we kind of build for able people to actually try out, be like, okay, this is how the actual hand works. And novel enough, a lot of kids love that. And so if that's something we can actually modify, actually transform into something, into an actual viable product, then that would be another good avenue to approach.
Yeah, sure. And again, that could be, that ties into that top one of maybe sales of that in the U.S. would offset in some way the losses in places, right? I don't know. That's going to be at some point we're going to have to look at a spreadsheet or some sort of business model so we can get like way more concrete on this, because even at a high level, the numbers need to make sense.
And there was like a give a helping hand model where we would license sort of an Enable brand, like the Susan G. Komen Foundation has basically made like Pink their sale, and portion of the profits where that like represent Enable would go to Enable, like have like the little Enable emblem on T-shirts or so on and so forth, and then a portion of that would go to us to build the hands in handy.
Okay.
The Embrace model would offer 2 pricing tiers for nonprofits and for-profit groups. This would be more like after, hopefully we would expand.
Okay.
We'd be able to offer, whenever other groups would come to us, we would be able to offer something for nonprofit groups and something for-profit groups.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, that may be something where, you know, you'd use some, I don't know, higher density, or sorry, you know, whatever, higher resolution printing or whatever it is, some sort of special features for a premium model that you can sell in, you know, Europe or something. And then, or are you talking about locally having 2 different tier prices for nonprofit and for-profit prostheticists, or however you guys are doing it at the local level?
I personally wasn't thinking about it locally. I don't know if anyone else can speak to that.
No, I think this was more of this would be offset to, I mean, this would be purchased locally to us rather, but purchased abroad, and then the offset profits would be gone towards Haiti.
Okay. So this is again sort of this is sort of like the Tom's model thing again, where you're basically
they're all like a little like pretty similar, but this seems to be like the way that we're gonna get a financial offset for this.
Okay.
But in this model, specifically though, in the Embrace model, we want to at least establish some sort of price point, even for local, Haitian local patients or recipients rather, so that there's a little more investment, and there are towards the product themselves that they're actually buying, and there's a little more care.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, without having seen I remember the numbers that you came up with. You know, $50 and $35 worth of resin, or whatever it was. You know, I mean, I just don't know what the business models are like, or production cost models. Where, you know, is it possible, you know, squeezing here and there to make it as break even or even profitable as possible? I just don't know. If you can get there, fantastic. If not, then it's all about minimizing the subsidy, essentially, right? That you're going to need to do.
Definitely.
So
those are some of the business models we had.
Okay.
We had actually kind of build up from that, but coming back to your point as to a patient flow chart. I guess this is the next slide we want to approach, Dante.
Sure. This was basically like how we envisioned like the typical Enable Haiti patient experience.
Okay.
Where the patient will learn about Enable through whether we do like the radio marketing or the salespeople on the ground, so on and so forth, word of mouth, where they would go and visit the local prosthetist who would measure them. The device could be manufactured either locally or in bulk in the U.S. with different distribution fabrication models that we had thought of. The patient would receive the device and is fitted by the prosthetist that day, hopefully, seeing as the population is relatively transient. And the follow-up data would be collected via the different methods we've talked about. And then the patient and the community would create a support network with each other, and the product would be able to sort of build from there. And the cycle would continue.
Right.
Ideally, the circle would close there.
Yeah, sure. And frankly, at any given point, it could probably feed back to, you know, any upstream point in the chain, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's no reason why the prosthetist shouldn't be on the same social networks and hearing, you know, what patient experiences are like, so, or even the manufacturer for that matter. Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's totally reasonable. Great.
Yeah, so that's basically what we've got since the last time we met. That's the steps we've made.
Okay. So I don't know if the stuff that we talked about earlier helps in terms of I think you guys have some mapping out to do to make this oh, gee, where do I start here? So we need to figure out who the people that you're going to pitch to are, because that's probably going to affect your main storyline. So we need to take some time and see who that's going to be. That being said, you should have your own sort of standalone story that you can, modify to different audiences as needed. So yeah, I think thinking your major the major strategy out. It just came up recently that sort of very late in this conversation that your first plan was to do stuff with the stuff printed in the U.S. for example first, and then moving to local, right? Whereas when we first started talking about this, it was sort of still up in the air. First started talking about this today. To me, it still seemed like you're still deciding between how to properly balance those two models and put it into your overall strategy. I don't know if it's still up in the air, but getting something.
Like the end part of that is definitely still up in the air. The beginning was going to be like, whenever we submitted to OneStart, it was like step one would be print 10 to 100 hands via volunteers in the U.S. and go over there. Step two would be print 250 and go over there. And then step three would be trying to develop the sustainability part.
Right. Sorry. So to me, that printing the stuff in the U.S. and going over there with the 100 or in the first stage and then 200 in the second stage, that to me still is. That's sort of like the pre-project to me. That's like doing market research in a way, in my mind. If you really want a sustainable model that you're going to be able to export to other places, I think what you want to learn from your proof of concept is those questions like how much do things need to be bespoke and how much can they be assembled, right? Or how much can they be pre-printed or pre-manufactured somewhere else and assembled on site? Where in that production chain do you need to have the 3D printers or 3D printers at all, for that matter? These are sort of fundamental questions which your proof of concept experiments can essentially at least get some data for. And it may be just a mixed thing. Like, yeah, we need both. And duh, the world is a complex place. We're going to need two types of, overall two.
Does it make? That's actually what I was going to ask next. Does it make it look less attractive as a venture if it is more of a symbiotic relationship versus something self-sustaining?
Well, my point was more about the production strategy, though I guess it does relate to whether it's symbiotic, meaning
sourcing, like manufacturing, where the manufacturing node or origins are coming from, rather. Like, are we whether we're just producing on our own or whether we're relying on a volunteer network, which people are willingly giving their resources to contribute to a venture and making them actually stakeholders versus having something more self-contained.
Yeah, if you have data on that volunteer network and you say, hey, we've had this number of contributions over the last 10 years running with this variation, and there's no reason to expect it to go up or down, or and you can put some risk bounds on that, then I think it's perfectly reasonable to incorporate that into your calculations, right? It's just like, we're running this incubator here, and we project having, whatever X hundred thousands of dollars of sponsorships per year, right? Might go up, might go down, but historically we've been able to get this, so we can put that in, right? Or you can be safe and say, no, we want this to be completely sustainable or as sustainable as possible. We're not going to assume anything about volunteer hours, but then anything that we do get from volunteers, like pure gravy, right? Again, without knowing the magnitudes of these numbers, I just don't know where to draw the line in terms of, okay, we're going to make a call, this is what the business model should be like, at least with the first iteration,
So you're trying to say you want some numbers, huh?
It would be, getting as concrete as possible, as early as possible is great, because the thing about that is, I understand you can't do everything, and you're trying to go qualitatively and say, okay, does this even make sense at all, like not knowing any numbers? But at some point, I think we're at the point where we have a few ideas where it's like, well, I don't know, should we go this way or this way? It's like, well, if it's twice as cheap going this way, maybe it makes more sense to do this versus that. I don't know. It's getting to that point where it's not necessarily orders of magnitude anymore, but maybe just factors of 2 or 3 or 5.
Yeah, we had a call, I guess last week or a week and a half ago, with some of the guys down at Haiti Communautaire, and we were actually able to get some numbers, very concrete numbers for the first time, about how much it would cost to manufacture down actually in Haiti, in Port-au-Prince. So we know we need to, and we will aim for the next call to actually break these numbers down, because we have a little bit of a patient flow right now, but it had some holes in it, so we knew like the number of patients that we think will need hands. I think we need to break that down into children and adults so that we can, because those are actually going to have very different costs associated with them for materials.
Okay.
But if we just sort of actually go through and build out a forecast, I think that would be really, really helpful. And then we can just break out different scenarios for, like, if we do manufacture in Haiti, it's going to cost this much per hand, which brings our profit down to this, or our overall cost up to this. So
and it's a useful exercise. Even we all know that they're imperfect numbers and they're imperfect. You know what I mean? So that's fine. But it may point out the absolute no-goes, or it'll point out, hey, within a factor 2, we really can't see something that's better than this, so we're gonna go for both. And that's fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
So my suggestion for next week, or if you could get some numbers and mail something out before next week so we can look things over before our call, that'd be a little more useful. For you guys, hopefully we could be more useful for you. That would be my biggest suggestion. I think, I don't know if one of you guys is taking notes. I sat down, I looked around for a pen when I first got here, and of course I didn't have anything, so I didn't bother getting one. But if someone took notes on today's talk, if you can mail those out, that'd be great too. And then, I mean, trying to get concrete now with some numbers would be pretty helpful for the overall, refinements of this.
Yeah, I agree. And I just thinking off the top of my head, like we could make forecasts for at least 2 or 3 of the different business models we've outlined, and that would provide really good perspective.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's the way to go.
Okay. Good. So between now and our next call, actually, is the boot camp itself.
Yeah. All right. So how many of you guys are going to be out here? Are you going to do it remotely? What are you guys going to do?
All 3 of the guys, except I'm the only one not going.
Okay. You're not going to take your 72-hour plane flight to be here for 24 hours or whatever. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think I will be there on Friday. Saturday, I'm not sure any of us are going to be there. I wish I could say I was going to be out enjoying time with my family or whatever, but I think I have some other commitment for that day. But if you guys are around on Friday, then I'll see you guys there.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
We'll all be there.
Awesome.
We'll all be there on Friday.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you have, I don't know what the schedule is for you guys, but if you have time to stop by the incubator, that'd be cool too. Check it out.
For sure.
That'd be great. I mean, I'm sure it'd be something after. I have to look more specifically at the timeline for the agenda.
Okay.
But if you guys are available to meet afterwards in the afternoon, evening, we could even grab dinner or something else to flesh things out a little more.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, sounds good. Cool.
Thanks a lot, Rich.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, hopefully it's useful. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
No, thank you very much. We appreciate the input.
Just so that you know, so we record the session, so we have the whole thing recorded.
Okay, great.
That with you, and I also took notes, so I'll share that with you.
Fantastic. Yeah, okay, so if you could summarize my random ramblings and babblings down a little bit, so that'd be great, because then I can send just a quick summary, or if you can summarize it, then we can send that out to Doug and Adriana so they can be up to speed.
No problem.
Cool. Alrighty, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks again.
Alrighty, take care, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, stopping broadcast.
No, keep it going.
Keep it going?
Yeah, so at least we can record our own conversation now too. Or do you want to... Oh, okay. Yeah, stop it.